Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and I am, as always, joined in by Peter Baracchini. Logan Horn is taking a definite, hiatus from the show, but of course, we'll welcome back anytime on the show, and we're going to have a few new faces coming up. Hoping it was going to be today, but not extenuating circumstances, power outages, stuff like that happen.
Stuff we can't control.
Yeah, it's out of our control, but we're going to have them on the show coming up, so stay tuned for that. But today we're going to be talking World Juniors, just wrapping up the tournament that wrapped up this past weekend. We're just going to do some wraps and MVPs, bunches of stuff like that, so have some fun with that. But first of all, Peter, how's it going?
Yeah, doing good. Again, in unfortunate circumstances with Logan, we wish him the best and hope everything is okay. World Juniors came to an end. It feels like the tournament came by and went very, very quickly. I wish we would have had like another week or so, but you can't because, they got to get back to their respective teams and everything like that. But yeah, entertaining to say the least. I think this was the most on par tournament in terms of competition because it seemed like there was always like some doubt every single game of what could happen. And that's what I want to see more of every single time. And it looks like it's going to be heading in that direction in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a given. Like, it was a while where it was a given. Canada was going to be the winner, gold medalist. I mean, US was in there too, but there weren't a lot of like parity. And now it seems like any team can win at any point. And yes, one of the main powers did win the gold medal. The US came up and won that. Unfortunately, Sweden is still waiting for that gold medal. They were now 2012 was the last time they won gold. And it's been a long time for them. And they're going to have to wait another year at least to see if they can do that. But before we get going on wrapping up the tournament, we here at the Hockey Writers recently expanded our content into the Substack universe, dedicated to every team, as well as one dedicated to NHL Draft and Prospects content. Sign up to get all the prospect articles delivered directly to your inbox multiple times throughout the week. We also have a premium tier with exclusive articles, mailbags, interviews, and more. You can find a sign-up link in the video description below, so check that out. All right, well, let's start with the gold medal game, which was pretty close for the most part throughout the game, but then the US kind of pulled away in the third period and then won pretty handily. But Sweden did put up a fight, and they were, Lekkerimaki scored again, ended up being the tournament MVP when it all came to an end. But Peter, what were some takeaways from that game? It was exciting. Until the U.S. started scoring a few goals and getting it kind of far apart. But what do you think about the gold medal game?
Yeah, until the third period when U.S. just, basically blew the doors wide open on that game. But yeah, you saw a bit of everything. You saw what made Sweden a formidable foe with a high-octane offense and being aggressive on the attack. You saw the weakness in the USA's defensive game, which, it kind of like it was going in that direction where they had trouble containing Sweden, and the speed and mobility from everyone in the defensive zone, it was a little bit difficult for them, but they managed to hold together. They managed to pull through. They managed to find their game, and their stars stood out in a big way. I mean, Gabe Perreault, also that whole entire, U18 line of him, Perreault, Smith, and Leonard went to work and were probably the difference maker in that tournament or in that game as well for Team USA. But yeah, and then you saw some surprises as well. Obviously, kind of giving it to the Sweden fans a little bit as well, because now there's starting to be a rivalry forming there, given the last two U18s. But yeah, exciting. Really, you couldn't have asked for a better game because for that first 40 minutes, it could have gone either way until USA went full throttle with even Z Williams stepping up, a lot of their other core players like Rucker McGroarty, a lot of other guys that they relied on heavily took advantage of the situation, and they didn't look back once that third period hit. And good on the USA. They were the favorites going in, and they basically put a stamp on it, saying that is why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was close because yes, the US came and got up 3-1, but then Lekkerimaki scored right at the end of the period to make it 3-2, and they're like, okay, here's the game. And then yeah, the third period came along and they just kind of ran over him. William Leonard, McGroarty all made it to 6-2. But yeah, it's tough because Sweden, they're at home, and of course they want to win a gold, and silver is the only medal you lose to win. Like it's an unfortunate medal to get. Yeah. And I think a lot of the time it's appreciated a lot more a few weeks after the fact that you're like, yes, we're the second best team in this tournament. And they end up actually liking the silver when obviously you want gold. But yeah, it was a good game though overall. I mean, Sweden showed off their offensive chops, and we did talk about the predictions before, saying that the defense. I thought the goaltending was stronger on the U.S. side. It ended up being that. Trey Augustine was really good in that game. Ended up making quite a few really good saves to keep it that deficit for the U.S. So, and then Havelid had a few times where he looked like the lesser goaltender, even though he was really strong throughout the tournament. So it came down to, I think, the goaltending, because Sweden and US, I'd say this offensive firepower is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good game though. I think it ended up being exciting to watch. And even though it did end up being a blowout, 6-2, but it was still pretty good overall. All right, well, let's get to the other game. That was way more crazier than this one. Ended up being an 8-5 final, but Finland was up. What was it? 5-2.
5-2.
Yeah, 5-2, and then Czechia just came alive and scored a ton of goals, made it a game, and tied the game, and then went ahead 6-5 pretty late in the game too. So ended up adding a couple empty netters to make it the 8-5 score. But what do you think about that bronze medal game? My gosh, I mean, what was it? The biggest comeback in World Junior history?
Insane. Yeah, it was something. It was something. And it was actually 5-3. I forgot that Becker scored a shorthanded goal towards the end of that period.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like Finland was in control with that game. You saw Konsta Helenius, good tournament, but starting to find his score sheet a little bit consistently. Lenny Hamanaho looking really strong as well. It seemed like, Finland was in control, but then something ignited in Czechia and they just came out flying. I mean, Yuri Kulik, he scored his second, and then you saw Becker scored his second, Thomas Hammerall right after. And the last Kulik scored in 4:41. The remaining goals happened in the last 2 minutes of the game. Which is very, very crazy and insane to see that. I mean, 18:04 was when Becker scored, then Hammer at 18:19. So literally like 15 seconds later, then Ryman and Becker with the empty netter, Becker getting the hat trick, which was very phenomenal on his part. And you know what? This is why Czechia, outplayed Canada in certain spurts of their game. They never gave up. They never quit, and the bounces went their way. They took advantage of that. You could say luck was on their side. You could say luck was on their side again in the bronze medal game, but it worked out to their advantage. They took advantage of their opportunities. They scored when they did, and they didn't look back. And this is why that, despite them, this is why they were the runner-up last year. Didn't quite get to that point this time around, but still a very dominant team, and they had a lot of firepower, and their star players came to play.
Yeah, I mean, we did say that don't count out Czechia. They were the runner-up last year, so it's not like they're a pushover team. That they have a lot of talent. Yuri Kulik was a monster in this tournament. He's an NHL player. I mean, he should be in the NHL. Probably not far off on that note, but Yeah, oh, what a great game to watch. Crazy game to watch. So yeah, gold medal game, bronze medal game, both really good games. I'd say the gold medal game of last year was better because it was a
Oh
lot more
yeah.
drama filled, obviously. It went to overtime, and it was, yeah, that game was really good. But yeah, two good games to watch, and overall pretty good tournament to watch too. So um yeah, pretty good. All right, well, let's get to some MVPs. We're just gonna pick an MVP from every team here. Some be easier than others. Let's go to the US first, the gold medalists. And there's a few names you can list off these guys. There are a lot of great performances throughout the tournament. Peter, who do you have as US's MVP?
Uh See, this is tough. I mean, obviously Cutter Gauthier, we're just gonna not talk about that trade just
Yeah.
yet. We're gonna keep that aside. We're gonna strictly talk about his World Junior performance. Obviously 12 points in 7 games, that's absolutely phenomenal. I would have thought that maybe he would have scored a little more goal, a few more goals. Only scored 2 throughout the tournament, but his playmaking was on display, and that is why you have other people to carry the workload when maybe your shot isn't going well. That was the case for Cutter, but his playmaking was on point. I want to say him, but I'm also going to give an honorable mention to Gavin Brindley because he scored some
Oh
timely
yeah.
goals and very important ones as well throughout the tournament. He scored 6. He was one of my players to watch, or one of my prospects of the week as well, heading into that tournament or into the final game as a result of that. So either way, on Team USA, you really could pick as many as 3, 4, or 5 players on that team. But I'm going to give Cutter Gauthier my MVP with a little honorable mention to Gavin Brindley.
Yeah, lots of names on the US. You could have picked Trey Augustine, probably another one, even though he didn't play the whole tournament. But in the important games he did, and he was really good. All right, for Sweden, I've got there's again quite a few names you could pick from this one, and the one that I'm going to pick is a Canucks prospect, Jonathan Lekkerimaki. I think he was a tournament MVP, so
Might as
obviously
well.
Sweden's MVP, pretty easy. Otto Stenberg, I think, gets an honorable mention too. He was again really good throughout the tournament. There's a few names I think you can pick. Hugo Havelid, even though he did give up quite a few goals in the gold medal game, was really solid throughout the tournament. His numbers at the end, yes, a little bit inflated because of that gold medal game, but overall, he didn't allow much and kept Sweden in a lot of games. And their defense as a whole too probably deserves an MVP mention because they were really good defensively throughout the tournament too. But I'm giving it to Lekkerimaki because he scored quite a few goals and just lethal on the power play. Too. I'm looking forward to him being in Vancouver sooner rather than later. I don't know when. He'll be in the AHL next season, but I don't know when to the NHL yet. All right, Peter, Czechia. Again, quite a few names, especially what that crazy bronze medal game is. We probably pick one of those guys. But who do you got as an MVP for Czechia?
Yeah, we already mentioned him, Yuri Kulik. I mean, he was the driving force for that offense. There's a reason why he's this close to NHL ready, and he was able to still dominate the competition at his age level. Um, Probably the last time we're going to see of him at this tournament, and he went out with a great, kind of like finale encore performance, will you say, earning another medal in the process. Obviously, maybe they would all like to win a gold medal, but to end the tournament off with a bronze, I think that's a great way for him to end his World Junior career because, again, great power, great energy, great skill set. The shot is just impressive, and he scored some timely goals again when Czechia needed it. So he's going to be my MVP for them.
Yeah, he finished the tournament with 12 points, 6 goals, 6 assists. So actually co-led the tournament in points with Cutter Gauthier. So yeah, deserving of that as for sure. Big part of the team and big part of the team last year as well. Definitely an NHL player. I think the Buffalo Sabres are going to be he's going to be pretty good for them in the near future for sure. All right, on to Finland. Again, this is a team that they looked like they were on their way to get a bronze medal. Unfortunately, Czechia had other ideas on that. There's a few names you could probably pick. I'm going to pick Lenny Hamanaho on this one for MVP. I finished with 6 points in the 7 games, 4 goals. honorable mention to another guy's had a ton of assists in this in the tournament was where is he now? I just had him up on my screen. He's gone. Never mind. I was looking at a different person. Jari Lassila was really good too. Had 8 points in 7 games. I'm looking at a Czechia guy. That's why. So I'm gonna give it to Amanaho though. He was good throughout the tournament, and we've talked about him a lot in this show. So I'm giving that to him. All right, Peter, Canada. They had some good performances. I mean, we probably pick an obvious one, but who's your MVP for Team Canada?
Yeah, I hate to go with the obvious one, but you got to give it to Macklin Celebrini. I mean, even you could say that maybe his production, 8 points in 5 games is good, but you could say that the production against quality competition probably wasn't as there. But even in the games where he didn't produce, you still saw what made him the potential or, the consensus #1 pick in this year's draft, the skill set, the speed, the ability to get on the attack, the compete level. Everything that stood out about him is why he was Canada's best player throughout the whole entire tournament, despite Canada not having the kind of production or the consistency from everybody else in the lineup. And you hate to rely on a 17-year-old to carry the offensive load, but he came just as advertised. So, he is my, MVP of the tournament. I think you could also give it to, maybe Braden Yeager, Carson Rakoff as well. But then again, the point gap between them, it was Celebrini 8, and I believe Yeager had the next most, which was 5. So again, if you're going by stats, but even just overall play, I thought Celebrini was the best player by far every time any Canadian was on the ice.
Yeah, I mean, that was my obvious one. Celebrini is, he's only 17. He can be back in this tournament next year. Whether he will be is another story, depending on who picks him in the draft, if he does jump to the NHL right away. But they may let him go depending on how he's playing as well. So we'll see, because it is in Canada, so it's not like he's gonna have to travel overseas or anything like that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. All right, on to Slovakia. They had some moments in this tournament where they looked like they could become in the medal rounds and do some damage, but I'm going to give it to Servac Petrovsky. 5 goals in the tournament in the 5 games that he played. So I mean, 9 points overall. He was probably Slovakia's best player. I mean, Philip Mazar had his moments as well. But Slovakia is another team where I think it depends on how they perform, because they've had some great players over the years. Of course, they were missing a few really big guys in this one. Slavkovsky was a big one that they didn't have. So I mean, there is a few guys that were missing, but Petrovsky, I think, had the best tournament for Slovakia. So I'm giving him the MVP for Slovakia. All right, on to the teams that are we're getting to the lower end teams now, and to Switzerland. I mean, Switzerland had a pretty good tournament overall. Who do you got as their MVP?
I'm gonna give it to Rodwin Dionisio. The only NHL talent on their roster, but I thought he was very strong, very competitive on the back end. Showed a good 2-way game, great mobility, and got in on the offense as well with 4 points, 2 goals as well. Obviously, we talk about how great of a defensive system that the Ducks have with Mintyukov, Zellweger, Luneau, Warren. Dionisio is one of those names that you should keep an eye on, or that's not getting as much attention as you should. And I think he stood out very well for Switzerland. Again, you want to see parity, you want to see more competition. Switzerland did just that, and I really like Dionisio's game.
Yeah, I mean, Anaheim did lose one of their big time young defensemen. They did trade him. We'll talk a little bit about the trade later on. But there's still a really strong system on defense, and that's where they, I've said in the past, you deal from strength, and they can do that to increase their prospect pool in another area. They trade away from a strength, and that's what they did with trading Jamie Drysdale. So but he did have a really good tournament for sure. All right, on to Latvia, and we talked about a couple guys that were really good in this tournament. I'm going to give it to Dan Zlakmelis. I mean, he's been good. Like I said in the last episode, he's been good in the last few World Juniors for a team that uh, doesn't usually have a lot of talent on it, but they still play a really hard game. Was captain of the team, so yeah, he ended up being one of their better guys again. Another guy we did mention him a bit too. Was who was it? The Nick Svanenko was really good too. They usually have a couple standouts, and those two definitely stood out again for the Latvians there. All right, on to the relegation teams. Germany did win that relegation game, so they are still in the tournament. Norway was unfortunately relegated. Who do you got for an MVP for Germany?
Yeah, it's tough because I didn't want it to come down to one game. You want to see like a mini tournament with that. But you got to give it to Veit Oswald, who was their leading goal scorer with 5 points in 4 games. He even scored it in that relegation game as well. So he played a very important part for Germany to, you know, be a big reason why they're still in this tournament for next year and not being relegated to the next level or to the level below. Obviously, the top names for Germany, their prospects are all at the next level. The chances are they're not going to be coming back, and they need more players to try and step up and develop in their system a little bit more. Obviously, you got Julian Lutz. You're not going to rely on him a whole lot as well. I think this may have been his last tournament as well. He's 19 years old. So hopefully the pipeline is still going to be strong in the future for Germany because they just saved off elimination. And after years of staying up in this tournament, they got to keep doing that. But I really liked Oswald's game. I thought he was very strong, very competitive. Got the offense to go in whenever they needed him to. And that's why he's going to be my MVP.
Yeah, I mean, it's Germany. Yeah, I wish it was a bit more of a tournament rather than just that one game because anyone can win one game. And Norway actually deserved better because I think they had even though they were a lesser team, they did fight really hard throughout the tournament and ended up being relegated. They're going to have to fight their way back into not this year's one, but next year's. And hopefully they can do that. So Kazakhstan will be the team coming into the next year's World Juniors, and they're just gonna have to wait another year, hopefully just 1 year, not have to wait quite a few again.
Exactly, yeah. Side note: Oswald also assisted in 2 of the other goals, including the game winner. So
there we go.
A lot of his points came in that game, but he stood up when it mattered.
Yeah, clutch game there. All right. Now on to the aforementioned Norway. I think they've got a couple guys. I'm going to give it, even though Michael Branzig Nygaard had a pretty good tournament, I'm going to give it to their goaltender, Marcus Stenrud. He, for a team that gets shelled almost every night and they can't score, he has to be usually lights out to keep his team in the game. And he was. I think he had quite a few good games. So I'm going to give it to him just because, goaltender is the worst position to be in for teams like this that just don't have a lot of talent in front of you. And he battled. So, but honorable mention to Branzig Nygaard, who had a good tournament too, as a draft eligible for sure. We'll talk a bit more about those guys in a bit. All right. Well, there's our MVPs for each of the nations that were in the World Juniors. Let's move on to our team's prospects. And I was hoping for a little bit more of an expanded because we had 2 other guys that would have been on the show. We had another 2 teams there, but we'll talk about our 2 teams. Peter, Toronto Maple Leafs had a couple on Team Canada. Unfortunately, they couldn't get far. But what do you think about their performance throughout the tournament?
Yeah, everyone is going to. We already saw it on social media how people were pinning the blame on that loss already on Fraser Minten, already on, other players as well. Oliver Bonk, because, it went off his skate and all that. And, just the stupidity on social media was just out of this world. But, I thought both Minten and Cowan had good tournaments. Nothing great. Obviously, Team Canada really as a whole didn't stand out. I really did not think Minten should have been in the top 6. I thought maybe he's more of that middle six guy, second or third line center that could play in all situations. To rely on him as a goal scorer or a top six player, bit of a stretch. I did like the energy that Cowan provided as a bottom six forward, the tenacity, the energy. Again, slow start to the tournament, but I thought he got a little bit more comfortable as the tournament went on with the forechecking, the speed, the tenacity in his game. Again, good tournament. I did obviously you would have liked to see a better outcome from Team Canada, and I would have liked a little bit more from them, but you know what? It was a good tournament nonetheless.
I mean, both of those guys weren't, I don't know if they were expected to be big difference makers for Canada. I mean, they've had
In
great,
terms of the lineup, Minten, where he was, I think Canada
maybe,
won a little bit more, but Cowan, I think maybe it was more lower on the depth chart. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Minten, he played in the NHL this season too. I mean, so maybe he was expected to do a bit more, but yeah, he's still very young. Are they eligible for
They are
next year?
eligible
Yeah.
for next year, yes, to return.
So they both could be back for Team Canada to redeem themselves next year, unless they make the team and they're prominent members of the Maple Leafs. I don't think Cowan, but Minten maybe. He could be part of the team.
Possibility, yeah.
Right. So okay, for the Canucks, I mean, already mentioned Lekkerimaki. I don't have to really talk about him too much more. He's going to come up later on again. A phenomenal tournament for him. Showed off his shot multiple times, one-timer. He's got such an arsenal. Wrist shot, slap shot, one-timer. Yeah, he was really good throughout the tournament from game one. So he was good. Tom Willander, really good as well. He's had a really good season in the NCAA and kind of parlayed that into the World Juniors. Solid defensively, scored a goal. So, I mean, I was really happy with this tournament. And then Elias Pettersson had a few highlight reel hits throughout too. And very excited for these three. I mean, I was hoping that Lekkerimaki would dominate. I wasn't really expecting Pettersson and Willander to be, I'm not saying they didn't dominate, but they were really solid and showed that they are still high-end prospects. And Pettersson just keeps impressing me for where the Canucks got him in the third round. And he looks like that modern day type defensive defenseman where he can move the puck, hit, be good defensively, and skate the puck out of the zone too. So I'm excited to see what they can do later on. I think Pettersson will be in the AHL maybe at the end of this season. Once his season in Sweden ends, he's coming over, according to Alvin. So same thing with Lekkerimaki won't be. He'll be coming over next season. So all three of those guys will be in North America next season. So I'm excited. I think they're all going to be big parts of the Canucks in the near future. I don't know when. Like I say, I don't know when Lekkerimaki. I don't want to rush him. I don't think they need to rush him. So let him dominate in the AHL, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right. Well, before we get to our second half, we're going to do a quick fire thing at the end of the show. But until we do that, got to remind you of our Substack here at the Hockey Writers. And we've expanded into the Substacks for every NHL team. We also have the NHL Draft and Prospects Substack as well, which gives you a lot of fun stuff. You can do the free version, or there's a premium tier that gives you exclusive articles, mailbags, interviews, and more. And you can find that sign-up link in the video description below. All right. Well, let's move on to just a few quick-fire questions. First of all, we got to talk about the 2024 draft eligibles that played in this tournament. There were quite a few of them. A few more high-end guys. We already talked about a couple. Peter, who stood out the most for you throughout the tournament? There's some obvious answers here, but who do you find the most impressive?
I really like Zeev Boyum on Team USA. I mean, you saw what he was able to accomplish on the back end with the production, the ability to be very patient with his shooting, not to force any plays. He was very confident and very poised with his mobility, the decision-making, and everything like that. I thought he was very strong. and just got better as the tournament went on too. I thought that, he's a player that, has increased his stock overall because of his play in the NCAA. But I thought what we saw in the NCAA is just the same thing that we're seeing right now. He was very consistent. A little again, probably a little bit of a shaky start. Maybe didn't quite have his footing, but he did get better as the tournament went on. And I was very impressed with how consistent he was and was able to translate the play from or carry the hot start that he had over into this tournament as well and be a very strong presence on the back end for Team USA.
Yeah, Bouillon was probably that's my pick as well. I mean, Macklin Celebrini, I mean, maybe, I mean, we weren't really expecting him to be the dominant forward for Canada. We thought, okay, maybe he'll be middle six, do that. But he was probably their best forward. So maybe a bit surprising that he was their best forward. Is that an indictment on how Canada played, or is it on him? I don't know, maybe a bit of both. But I think he definitely stood out and maybe, I don't want to say solidified his spot as that first overall pick, but didn't make anyone question it. I think he definitely is still that consensus guy that's going to go first overall. But I mean, who knows what Cole Yzerman could have done if he was chosen for Team USA. He wasn't given that chance. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to pick Celebrini.
Also, that assurance goal for Bouillon in that gold medal game was kind of big as well. So that added insurance and the way that he was able to get it perfectly on net, for him to know when to do that at that exact moment and not force a play was just perfect.
Yeah, as a defenseman too, and a pressure situation, I think he definitely stood out the most overall as being in that clutch, not just kind of fading in the background. But stepping up and being a key player too, which not all these guys can do. So he definitely increased his stock for going into the draft. We'll see what he does for the rest of the season. All right, next question is increasing stock, but not just these 24 draft eligibles, but overall. I mean, there's quite a few prospects in here. Either that or surprising. You can go either way. But who increased their stock / surprised you throughout this tournament here?
I'm going to say Dominic Reimann on Czechia, an overager, a really strong WHL season. And he was one player to try or not necessarily to try to keep an eye on, but one player to watch because he was already feeling it with his play in the WHL. And it just seemed to carry over with the smarts and just the composure that he plays with every single time he's on the ice. Obviously, because he was passed over previously, I think this is going to make this tournament and his play overall is going to get a lot of teams on board to say, hey, we want to see more of him. This is a guy that's definitely going to be on our radar and possibly be selected, maybe not second round, but, a good third, fourth round option if he's still available. I really think that he's really improved his stock in that regard. And, again, key member for Czechia, really, really solid, and he's very, very smart. So I think he's one player that deserved the little bit of a nod to improving his stock.
Yeah, for sure. He's a guy that I'm going to be doing the prospect profile on. Just spoiler. Once the draft goes, I hope that he does. Overage guys, I want them to get drafted because the further it goes, the more less of a chance they do. But this will be his second go around, so we'll see if he can get that pick. And even if it's a third round pick, that's really good. When a guy he went through all 7 last time and gets to be a third rounder, that'd be pretty good for him. All right, my guy's Isaac Howard. I mean, he's again Tampa Bay Lightning getting this guy, and they never have high draft picks, yet they seem to get guys that are really good, even where they're drafted late in the later rounds. And Howard had a heck of a gold medal game and a couple goals. Ended the tournament with 7. Tied for the tournament lead with Lekkerimaki. I mean, 7 goals in 7 games, 9 points overall. I love his personality. I mean, his celebration.
You saw that celly. I was about to say, yeah, that was something.
He's a character. If you watch the draft again, what he was wearing in his draft on the draft floor, Yeah, he is a character. And we'll see what he can do in the NHL, but he's definitely a guy that probably fun in the locker room and definitely can score goals too. So I'm giving that to him. I think he increased a bit of his stock. I think Tampa Bay Lightning fans maybe want to know more about him now after this tournament. All right, well, let's go on the other end. Who are you expecting more from going this term? You thought maybe was going to be good, but ended up not doing what you kind of expected.
Going back to Team Canada, I'm going to say Matthew Poitras. You would have expected that a player who's in the Boston Bruins system, obviously they loaned him to the tournament so that he could be a big part of it. He had 4 points in 5 games, but at the same time, it wasn't at the level that I thought it would be at. I think, you saw it in spurts, and it was like he was consistent from one shift and not so much for the next two. It was a very mixed bag of results every single time he was on the ice, or maybe he was trying to do a bit too much, and he wasn't just really simplifying and playing his game that he knows how to. Um, he's one player that I thought should have produced a little bit more for Team Canada, or could have been relied on a little bit more. Just didn't quite see that from him. Really expected a lot more out of him from that tournament.
Especially the fact that he played a lot in the NHL already. And I mean, maybe give him benefit of the doubt that he, coming over had to deal with the jet lag early on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit, but yeah, I was expecting a bit more of a performance from him too. There's a few guys on Team Canada that you kind of maybe could say that they should have been better, that had some NHL experience
Mm-hmm.
and weren't that good. Um, yeah, Poitras's probably my guy too. I was expecting. I think I said it that he was going to be. He was going to be a key member of Team Canada. He could be their best guy, and unfortunately, he proved me wrong. So I didn't want that. But yeah, he definitely I thought should have been better for the team, and I thought he was going to be a leader for Team Canada, and ended up not being that. But we'll see. We'll see what he does comes back to the NHL, and he wasn't sent back to junior. I think he came back. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he can kind of bounce back from that. All right, let's do our version of the final awards, and we know what they picked, but let's do our own. It could be the same guys. I mean, not saying you can't pick these guys, but best goalie, best defenseman, and best forward. Peter, who's your best goalie?
I'm going to say Trey Augustine. I mean, he was a big reason why Team USA won gold medal. Backs off them to that victory throughout the whole entire tournament. I don't even give a nod to Jacob Fowler because he came in at certain points and really held the forward down as well and played well in the games that he was in. So I know we got to pick one. I'll say Trey Augustine, but you know what? The U.S. tandem was very, very strong. So Augustine's going to be my pick.
Yeah, between the two, I was going to pick mine based on the gold medal game, that who was going to win it, because Hugo Havelli was probably my pick too if they would have won gold, but he didn't have a very good gold medal game. So I'm going with Trey Augustine as well. Not going to be different there. I don't know if there's anyone else that could have been picked. I mean, there were some good performances from the lesser teams, but yeah, in the end, Augustine, I think, and he was battling an illness too, which is even more impressive how he came to play in the gold medal game. So I'm giving it to Augustine too. Right, best defenseman. Who do you got?
Theo Lindstein, and I'm gonna save that for a little bit later, elaborate a little bit later on, because yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. But the production that he had, 8 points in 7 games, believe he led all the tournament or among all defensemen in that category in points. So really great factor on the back end for Team Sweden. So he's gonna be my pick.
Yeah, he was really good. I'm going with another Swede, and that's going to be Axel Sandin Pellikka. He was clutch in overtime in the quarterfinals, I believe. And he had a pretty solid tournament overall. I mean, yes, yeah, I think he had one game where he looked a bit suspect defensively, but that's going to be his game. There's going to be games where he's not going to be that good. He's just so good offensively that I think you forgive that a bit. Same thing it's the same with Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar. You're like, well, they're just so dynamic. They're afforded the odd defensive mistake because they just make up for it so much more offensively. So I'm going to give it to Sandin Pellikka. I think he was really good throughout the term. So I'm going to give him the best defenseman. All right, best forward. Now we know Cutter Gauthier won this for the actual award, but quite a few other choices. Peter, who do you have? Is it Gauthier or you have someone else?
You know what? Just to be a little bit different, I'm going to say Yuri Kulik. I think that he was a little bit more impactful and a little bit more clutch at certain points than Cutter Gauthier. Obviously we talked about how Gauthier didn't quite have a shot going for him, but Kulik did, and he scored at some key moments, even in that bronze medal game. So I'm gonna give the slight edge to Kulik.
I'm going with Jonathan Lekkerimaki. I
just got to.
I gotta. I was hoping he would win it best forward. He won the tournament MVP, so I think that's a better one. But yeah, he was dynamic almost every game. I already said his shot, he showed off his hands a few times there too. He's close to being an NHL ready guy, I think. But again, I don't want to rush him. I think, and don't trade him. There's another one. The Canucks, they want to go all in this season. Don't trade Lekkerimaki as being one of those things. So, but I'm going to give him best forward. All right, our media all-star team and the MVP. We'll start with the all-star team. 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goaltender. We could be repeating a few names here, but who do you have as your all-star team?
Yeah, Kulik, Gauthier, Lekkerimaki as the forwards. Lindstein, and I'm going to say Thomas Hamara as my defense, and Trey Augustine as my goaltender.
All right, well, I got Lekkerimaki. I got the same forwards, actually. Lekkerimaki. It's pretty easy. 2 defensemen. I'm going to go Axel Sandin Pellikka and Lindstein. I don't know. Did they a pairing? I think they may have been a pairing.
If they were, they were probably feeding off each other very, very well.
I think they were a pairing. Yeah, and then goaltender Trey Augustine. Not going very different there, but that's my team too. MVP, I'm sticking with the tournament MVP that was chosen, and that's Jonathan Lekkerimaki. Do you got another MVP?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna stick with Lekkerimaki. I thought that throughout the tournament he was very, very clutch in terms of scoring goals. Just going to leave it at that because we can't say anything else other that's been said on this episode.
Yeah. I mean, he did come to play in the gold medal game. He scored. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately couldn't walk away with a gold medal. And that was his last time at the World Juniors. So unfortunately 3 times, only a silver. I believe. Or did they get a bronze too? Can't remember. Yeah, but he's got a silver for sure. All right. Well, there's the World Juniors for another year. Lots of great performances. Lots of these players won't be able to play next year. But US, I believe, returns quite a few of their team. Their gold medal squad is going to have a lot of players coming back, unless they make the NHL, that is. But they've got a really good chance of defending that gold medal next year. But Sweden's going to have a strong team again. You're going to know Canada's going to want to avenge that no medal performance. So we'll see what happens next year. It's going to be in Canada again. So we're going to have a lot more fun, I think, because it's here, and we'll be able to follow it a lot more with more reasonable hours of the day watching games. So that's going to be fun when it's back in Canada. All right, well, let's get to our prospects of the week, as we always end our show here. And I'll start off, and I'm going to go with the Canucks prospect. And this is a guy they signed last season out of college, and that's Max Sasson. He did actually play a few games for the Canucks last year, but hasn't appeared in an NHL game this season. But he is in the AHL with the Abbotsford Canucks. He's got 10 goals on the season and has been hot lately. He's been scoring at a bit of a clip, but he's been impressive. I don't know his NHL future. I think his ceiling's maybe a 3rd, 4th line guy, but already 23 years old. So, but he's got had 2 points in the last game. It's got 4 goals in his past, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. So yeah, he's been on fire a bit lately. And like I say, I don't know how much he's going to get in the NHL this season because they've got a few other options that Canucks keep moving around. And but he could end up getting a chance because he has had a couple games to play. No, he didn't play in the NHL last season. He was signed, but he went right to the AHL. That is, I'm thinking of someone else. Never mind, scratch that. He does not have an NHL experience. He did get signed out of Western Michigan and debuted with the Abbotsford Canucks last season. He had 7 games. I don't know who I was thinking of, but yeah, they debuted a few defensemen last season out of college. That's what it was. But Max Sassen's my prospect of the week. Right, Peter, who do you got? I know you probably mentioned him already.
Yeah, I sure did. And that's why would have been my pick for the defenseman of the tournament. That's Theo Lindstein, the St. Louis Blues pick in 2023, 29th overall. And there's a lot of talk whether his offensive capabilities could transition at the next level, or maybe he just wasn't as consistent in his draft year. But being on Team Sweden, they already seem to have their defense already set in stone. And Lindstein had to kind of work his way up, similar to like Axel Sandin-Pellikka last season or last tournament. And Lindstein was very, very dominant. He was more productive. He was more confident. They relied on him very heavily with, his transitional game, his playmaking, his ability to play strong defensively. This is a player that doesn't stand out in terms of skill or creativity that Sandin-Pellikka has, but he's very effective and he's very calm in pressure situations. I really liked his game in this tournament, and he just got better as it went on. This was his first time at the World Juniors. I thought he played exceptionally well, and I think that, most likely he should be available, or probably not. He's going to be 19. He's already 19 in January, so he will be available next year's tournament. He could be a returnee. And I think he's just going to have another strong performance next tournament if he's added to the roster, because we talk about Tom Willander's game. We talk about Elias Pettersson's game. We talk about Sandin-Pellikka's game. Again, he doesn't, not one single thing stands out, but he excels at a lot of different aspects, the playmaking and everything like that. So he's the reason why he's my prospect of the week.
Yeah, we've talked about him a couple times in this show, and yeah, very impressive tournament. I'm pretty sure he was paired with Sandin-Pellikka.
That's where the points came from.
Yeah.
Well, but still impressive.
Still impressive. Willander was kind of bumping around the top pairing and the second pairing. He was a bit all over the place, and Pettersson too. Both of them had high ice time, so they were in the top 4 most of the time. But they very impressive overall, Sweden's defense in this tournament. So, and that was one where that's not always the case. We're always saying, well, Sweden, I think it was maybe not last tournament, the tournament before, that they have great forwards, but the defense maybe not. Yeah. So, I mean, this year, they were really strong on the back end. So, good tournament for Sweden. Unfortunately, getting that just the silver medal, but, they'll get the gold eventually. It's been a while, but I think they'll get it eventually. All right. Well, that does it for another episode of Prospect Corner. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribing to the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. Make sure you're catching out all our new episodes. And also make sure to check out our NHL Draft and Prospects Substack. Get caught up on all new Prospects content. We got the draft coming up really soon. Our profiles will start coming out in a couple months, but stay tuned for that. But that's going to ramp up really quick. We're going to have our coverage at the Hockey Writers as we do every year. Lots of great information coming your way throughout, not just the website, but the Substack as well. So check out all that at thehockeywriters.com. But thank you, Peter, for joining me on this week's episode. We're going to have at least one other panelist next week. We're going to probably, I don't know what we're going to do, but maybe do a mock draft. That'd be kind of fun to do another mock draft as we get closer to our, end of the year. Well, trade deadline. That's what I was trying to search for there. But yeah, until next time, we'll see you on another episode of Prospect Corner.